Hey, in this video, it's going to be less of an instructional video and more just me talking while I draw. So first thing I'm going to do is just let you know that this portrait's actually a photo from Earth's World, and that's an Instagram account you should definitely follow. Beautiful, awesome pictures of everyday people. And the topic of today's conversation, and I would like to let or I'd like for you to provide me some feedback with this type of format because it's kind of a new thing for me. I'm drawing and talking, and normally that's kind of a challenge, but the topic is going to be getting the most out of your art education. So I realize that a lot of you watching this video are probably taking art classes somewhere, either in high school or you're taking it in college. And I just wanted to provide some guidance on some of the things that I think will be beneficial to know and that can really help you out when it comes to being successful, not only as a student, but also when you get out there into the real world. I'll start off by saying the very first thing is that you want to be able to cultivate an understanding of like who your instructors are. Get a chance to really know your instructors. And many of your instructors will have offices, or they might have office hours. They could be held, virtually. They could be, they could actually have on-campus office hours, whatever the case may be. If you've got instructors that are teaching you, there's usually some mode of getting in touch with that instructor. And even if they don't necessarily have any advertised office hours, I think it behooves you to go ahead and find out and be proactive and reach out to them and, just say, hey, I want to have a chance to talk to you. And this does two things. First of all, it allows you to really get a chance to talk to your instructor outside of a classroom setting. Second of all, it allows you to be to build your network. Think about your instructors as people that you can potentially network with. And networks become really, really important because this industry is really, really small. And what you want to do is take advantage of the fact that you've got people that have worked in the industry, currently work in the industry, or freelancing, or what have you. These are people that you can come in. They've already probably done the same thing that you have before, and now they might have some advice or some insight that they can give you. Definitely take advantage of that. Find a mentor, and that mentor can be a teacher that you currently have, or it could be a teacher that you have a good conversation with. The only way you're going to determine that is by actually speaking to those instructors. And even if it's an instructor that you don't have in your own classroom setting, I always think that it's a good idea just to go ahead and say, hey, I'm on this campus and I want to just say hi. And 9 times out of 10, if you get them when they're in their office hours and they're not, preoccupied with something else, I think it's going to be very, very beneficial. The second tip is don't be afraid to iterate. And what I mean by that is that when you're working on something, if it's an assigned project or what have you, the first time you do something, especially when you're learning something, it's not going to be good. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right out there. It's like, and the same thing holds true for me too. Like when I'm working on something, it's very rare that the very first cut of what I do is actually going to be something that I like. I will usually end up taking 2 or 3 different versions of it and then kind of going from there. So, iteration is part of the process. When you work with clients, you're going to make changes, you're going to make fixes, you're going to have people that are going to tell you that they don't like the color purple or what have you, and you just have to go with the flow. The objective here is to make the client happy. But when you're in school, getting used to iteration and not taking it personally, not taking any kind of critique personally. First of all, when you're in art school, the critique should never be about, you should never take a critique personally. You should have a thick skin and really focus on trying to find ways of improving. And for that, you have to get good feedback. You have to get what I call actionable feedback. And this is something that you can get not only from your instructor, but from your peers as well. And, cultivating this idea of getting good feedback is not being afraid to hear it and make whatever changes you need to make the product better. Third tip is communication is key. So given that we live in a very, modern time frame, we've got all sorts of beautiful gadgets and, technology that's basically at our disposal. It just astounds me when students just go off the radar and you don't hear from them for weeks. And then right as the term is about to be over with, they're just flooding your inbox with all sorts of excuses about why they couldn't get in touch with you over the entire term. And I think that's just highly unprofessional. If you know that there's going to be an issue, or if you know that there's going to be some kind of a problem, just like in the real world, you let people know, hey, I'm going to have some difficulty with this deadline, or I need some extra help, I need some tutoring. Emailing your instructor to let them know that Photoshop is not working the day before the project is due is probably not going to earn you much sympathy, at least not from someone like me. So be proactive about your own education. Take it seriously. And, dovetailing on that, it's like when you're learning something, everything is going to take you longer than you think it's going to. And I usually tell my students that the first time you're learning something, it's going to take you 4 times as long to do that task the first time. As you get better, you will develop some insight and you'll start to get more, you'll be more comfortable with what you're doing and you will start to improve. But to expect perfection at the very, very beginning, I think is just very, it's impossible, right? So just accept the idea that you're learning something new, but try and, iterate a few times. Show your work to your instructors and get their feedback. And don't be afraid of what you're gonna hear. They might tell you that, hey, there's something here, your anatomy's broken or whatever, right? But it's an opportunity for you to then maybe ask follow-up questions like, well, what can I do to improve it? Or do you have any tips for me? Or, how can I fix this? That sets up this idea of dialogue, right? Which is really, really important. You want to get feedback on your work. You really do. It's going to make you a better artist, and it's just part of working in a commercial space. Now, if you're doing any kind of art where it's like, okay, it's more art for art's sake, kind of fine art, where it's more about what you feel and, it's more about making a statement, then that's kind of a different ball of wax altogether. But, I teach in a commercial art space and I practice commercial art. So for me, I've had to develop a very thick skin when it comes to working with clients and, making changes. And it's just part of the process. I've learned to put my ego to the side and focus on making the client happy. And I think if you can do that, I think that's going to be, it's going to be beneficial for you, and you're going to get a lot more clients, and you're going to be happy and successful in this arena. The last tip that I want to leave you with before I just go ahead and focus on drawing altogether is the idea that your education is yours. Your goal is to get the knowledge. And, what I mean by that is that, just because someone is not teaching you something doesn't mean that that can be an excuse for not learning it. I've had my share of instructors over the course of my academic career, some great, some not so great, and everyone in between. And really what it boils down to is if you're not picking up something from the way one instructor is communicating the idea, or if it's not coming clear through a book or some other means, then you have to get another resource. And we have YouTube, we have all sorts of great tools that you can use to supplement and get additional insight, because it's really about getting the material that you need to be successful. And at the end of the day, it's like that's the way real design works. Sometimes I'm given projects where it's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but it's a challenge. And I don't have a teacher that's teaching me how to do something. I just have to figure it out. And I will go on YouTube, or I will get a book, or I will find ways of solving that problem. And that's just the way things are. Now, controlling your education is something that, step one or part one of this, which is getting to know your instructors. I think that's a really important facet. So all of these tips are somehow interspersed and intertwined together, if you will. But taking advantage of that will kind of set you apart from the bulk of students who may or may not be as invested in their education. I mean, this stuff takes time to do. It's fun, but it is work. And it's nice to be able to get paid for something that you enjoy doing. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love that aspect of what I do. But the challenge here is that there are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days. And in the end, it's all about your professionalism and what you can bring to the table. And not every idea you create is going to be a good one. And that's okay. But the important thing is that you have the willingness to go ahead and make changes and fixes, and that you are not just going to say, well, so-and-so didn't teach me how to do this, so therefore I don't know it. No, you have to just be more proactive than that. So, those are my 5 tips for being successful in art school. And really, I think this kind of goes beyond art school too. This is for learning anything. And some of you might know my background, but I was actually an electrical engineer once upon a time. And so engineering classes were very much the same way, where I had to take courses in electronics, and I had to deal with good professors, not so good professors, confusing, difficult to absorb material. I, really had a lot of challenges, and it did not come easy to me at all. And I remember one specific scenario where I had a circuits class, and I'd heard all sorts of things about how difficult the class was and how the teacher's book was not good, and all the things that kind of filled my head before I even took the class for the first time. And I was already very intimidated by this whole prospect of taking the circuits class. So when it came time for me to actually be in the class, I looked at the book, and I didn't care for the book, but then I took it upon myself to say, okay, well, this is not going to be the only book on electronics that's out there. There's going to be other books that cover this topic, and I'm just going to go to the library and check out as many books as I can and find something that's going to speak to the way that I will understand the material. And that's what I ended up doing. And I could have easily just been one of the same students that just complained about the fact that the book was horrible and that the instructor wasn't helpful or whatever. I mean, you're going to run into situations like that, right? There's no school that I'm aware of where everyone is just amazing. Everyone has their own personality. Everyone has their own, commitment to what they're teaching, and their care for students learning stuff. I mean, you're going to run into this type of facet in whatever school you're in. So the important thing here is just to kind of accept that. Kind of don't use that as an excuse. You still need to learn the material. And that's going to fall on you. You need to be good about, being resourceful, like finding answers out there. And, once upon a time it was books, but now it's also, like I said before, YouTube videos and all sorts of cool stuff. I mean, this type of stuff did not exist when I was an engineering student. I mean, I'm kind of jealous about how prolific the information is. I'm looking at some engineering videos from time to time again, and I'm like, man, I wish I had that when I was a student, because that could have been super useful for me. And it's like that with pretty much every field. I mean, I even use YouTube when I'm trying to figure out how to fix something in my house. So don't hesitate to look at other resources. Just because one resource is not giving you the answers does not mean that it's time to give up. You just have to find the correct answers, and your resilience here is going to be kind of like the trait that you carry with you when you actually do design work for real, right? When you get clients, there are going to be certain things that you're not going to know how to do, or maybe you have to look something up, or maybe you did it once upon a time and you don't remember how you did it, right? These are all things that I think are fairly commonplace when you're out there doing real work. So I'm going to just add some highlights to this guy. This is kind of a new format for me, as I mentioned before. I'm not really sure how, what you think of me just talking while I work. This is very similar, honestly, to how I conduct my office hours. If there are no questions, I usually just chat with my students, and they ask me questions. There's usually some kind of a prompt or a topic, and we just discuss it. So if you happen to like this format, on occasion, I don't think I'm going to do this every single time, but I think just to kind of change up my videos, and for you to also get a chance to know a little bit more about me as a person, I think that these kind of things are nice as a one-off. So let me know what you think about this format in the comments below. I read all the comments. I do appreciate all of you spending time and once again sharing your ideas with me. Thank you so much for doing that. And now I will just finish this guy out and you get to watch. No, that's the one thing I always forget, to make sure my ink layer is locked. So let me just go ahead and do that, because I always invariably end up drawing on the layer that contains my inks. Another tip that I recommend here, since we're just talking about it, if I have to go back and correct the inks, just to avoid the idea of unlocking my layer and locking my layer, what I will typically do is just continue my inks on a layer above my existing inks, and then proceed to merge the layers in when I'm done. So there you go. That's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.